You are listening to the Digital Parent Podcast with your host, Ced Lewis.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Digital Parent Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Torch. Torch is a wireless Wi-Fi router that will allow you to take back control of the internet. With Torch, you can pause the internet, set appropriate screen time, and block sites from all devices within your home. You can literally control every electronic device with just a couple of taps on your smartphone. Make sure you go to mytorch.com/digital parent to get an additional $50 off coupon. Once again, that is mytorch.com/digital parent and get you a $50 coupon off this great Wi-Fi router. Now, on this episode of the Digital Parent Podcast, we have my great friend, Mercedes Zamudio, and she is the #1 tween expert in the country. And she's also the author of the soon-to-be released book called Shame-Proof Parenting. And on this show, we address the notion of parent shaming on social media. And, you know, parents are really getting killed on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram for every little mistake they make as a parent. And we really tackle this issue of how hard it is to really raise like teenagers and how we make mistakes as parents and how we really need to be looking at social media as a support, not as a vehicle to bash each other. So I hope you guys really enjoy this show. Let's get into it with Mercedes. Hey, Mercedes, welcome to the Digital Parent Podcast. We're so happy to have you on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Mercedes, you are a self-proclaimed tween expert. What is a tween expert? You may be the only tween expert in the country. Can you kind of talk about that field and how you became interested in becoming an expert on these kids who are like 9 to 13 years old?
Yeah, sure. So I'll say that I say tween expert, but really what it is that I'm like a collaborator with parents of tweens. So what I love about the tweens is that they're kind of like a second era of toddlerhood, except for they're going through puberty, which adds a whole nother layer of discovery, of personality traits, and of relationship development that sometimes parents can feel is really challenging. But what I tell my parents is think about it. When your kid was a toddler, they were challenging you a lot. They just didn't have as many words. Well, they're doing the same thing again as a tween. They just have a lot more words and a lot more awareness about life now. So it can feel like it's more different than when they were a toddler. But really what you're doing is you're giving, what I love about tweens is that it kind of gives parents another chance to help their child master what it means to be human. And that's why I really love that age group, because they really challenge us as adults. And they really challenge us to see, what do you really believe about being human? And can you teach that to me? And that's what I love about helping parents understand their tween.
So it's one of the biggest challenges with raising a tween, because that's an excellent point you just brought up. Like what you're saying, like when our kids are like 2, maybe 1.5, and we're trying to feed them something they don't like, and maybe they throw the spoon or spit the food out. You know, we think it's all cute and we laugh. But when they become like 12 or 13 and they're rebellious, you know, as parents, we're ready to fight back because we think they're challenging our authority. We're ready to hit somebody. But like you said, it's like the same behavior, but because now they're like these little small mini adults, we feel like, you know, we have to have this really aggressive response as a parent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that it can be, it definitely is what you just said, right? It's that we feel like we have to have this response as a parent. And really what I challenge my parents to see it as is what I just said. And I'll kind of reiterate it, which is our tweens really challenge us as adults to say, how do you really like feel about being human? And can you show me what that means? Our tweens challenge us so much because they're coming into their humanness, right? They're coming into what it means to be a full, authentic human. They have language. They are now starting to develop like their sexual identity. If they haven't already kind of established it before then, they're really coming into what does it mean to exist in this world? And just like when they were 1 and 2 trying to figure out what does it mean to walk and talk in this world, now their new tasks are, what does it mean to exist? What does it mean to communicate and build relationships? What does it mean to figure out my purpose in life? Like tweens are very much about that. That's why they gravitate to so many things. And that's why they're so, they're so questioning and rebellious, so to speak, because they're trying to figure out, what is this human thing really about? I've been coasting by for the past 10 years, waiting for my mom and dad to tell me. And now I'm trying to step out on my own and say, okay, mom and dad have given me 10 years. Now what do I want to do? And I think that can be really challenging to parents who are seeing it as rebellion and not seeing it as their child kind of moving into a new phase of what it means to be human.
So let me ask you a question about maybe one of the biggest challenges with raising a tween, because I like when they're smaller. When they're small, you spend a lot of quality time with your babies and your toddlers. But with a tween, as a parent, you're probably working 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 9 to 7. They have their own schedule where, they're at school all day. They may have extracurricular after school. So the only really quality time you may have is maybe around dinner, and that's it. So how do you have that opportunity to really engage them in what they're going through as far as their sexual identity, their humanness, just learning how to be their true authentic selves?
Well, there are a few ways, actually, because I think you're right. I think in this fast-paced world, everybody, especially by the time kids become tweens, everybody's got a full schedule between school, extracurriculars, homework, family, time, work for the parents own extracurricular activities. Like, it's very big. And so what I tell parents is to always look for and be aware of those little times when you can just talk to your child. So in the car, to and fro these different places, talk. How was your day? What's going on with you? I ask parents, instead of saying just how was your day, if you know something was going on, then, say, how was X or how was Y? So did you end up talking to your friend about such and the other? Did your teacher end up telling you what the next assignment was? Like, show your kids that you actually listen to them when they're telling you stuff. And I think that you have to really find those moments. They're not just going to come to you sometimes, especially in our busy hustle and bustle of our life in the 21st century. But you definitely have to say, all right, I'm in the car right now, or we're making dinner right now, or everyone's kind of in the house right now. Let's just start talking.
Now, how do parents communicate with kids in this social media age? Because, they're kind of like what we call digital natives. They speak a different language through text, through communication. How can parents raise them and be on top of all the things they're going on with them when the majority of communication is online now?
Yeah. So I think it's twofold. I think one thing that parents can do is not feel like they have to always be digital natives as well. So you kind of get a chance as the adult who hasn't had technology in your life to show your kid what it looks like to be outside of technology. And here's the fun part. You allow your kid to show you what it means to be a digital native. So that means that you might have to text your kid to talk to them sometimes. So if you call them and they text you back, instead of getting angry, expecting them to call you back, just text and say, hey, I was calling because, or hey, can you actually pick up the phone? Because I don't know how to text this to you. You can actually talk to your kid through text. You can send them memes if you want. You can talk to them through their different mediums. And the best way to do that is just to ask your kid simply, how is it best to communicate with you? Would you like me to call you? Do you want me just to text you? And then once your kid tells you, Mom, just text me, it's so much easier, then to start setting limits about that. So say this, if you want me to text you, then please answer me back within 30 minutes. Please at least look at your phone and answer me back within 30 minutes. If you don't do that, then I'm going to start calling you again because I'm going to assume that you're not able to text me, or I'm going to assume that something else is going on. And again, it's about that communication. It's not just about setting the limits and saying this is how we're doing it, but it's about saying, okay, where are my kids and how can I set a limit so that way we're making sure that everybody's on the same page.
I think that's a good point, because my son's a latchkey kid, and what he loves to do is as soon as he hits the door, he wants to FaceTime me to give me the rundown of what happened at school. And that's his way of communicating. He doesn't want to necessarily text. He wants to use FaceTime and really have that one-on-one communication, really go down the line of what happened from 8 o'clock that morning to the time he hits the door to the house.
Right. Right. And I love that. And I love that, if you can meet your kid where they are, you can most of the time get through to them. You can most of the time figure out, okay, how do I infuse my own understanding of the world into how they see the world? And again, it's that perspective. It's that mindset shift, not so much as I'm the parent, do what I say, but it's more like I'm the parent. I have such a huge influence on them. So how can I meet them so that way that influence actually seeps into who they are and how they see the world?
And I think that's a good point. Parents really using these online platforms to communicate with their kid in a positive way. Because one of the things, Mercedes, we're starting to see this trend of this shaming on social media. So when these kids are acting out, maybe they're bullying or they're sexting or something they're not supposed to do, which starting to be very normal for our tween. We're seeing parents go to social media, giving kids like haircuts on social media, writing stuff on their face, making them carry signs. And I think the parents get more out of it than punishing the kids, because they get this instant gratification from their friends. Like, hey girl, you really, doing what you're supposed to do. You're a great parent, yada, yada, which kind of feeds into that. But we're seeing like a lot of shaming of kids who are just, trying to figure themselves out on social media. What are your opinions on that? Do you see that as being very damaging to that trust and that bond that they're starting to develop at that age?
Yeah. So, what I'll say is this. It's kind of interesting that we're seeing this. And it's interesting because one of the things that I constantly talk about is ending parent shaming, which is ending the shame that we as a society throw at parents. And when I see parents doing what you're describing, I see it as kind of the culmination of what it feels like to be always bombarded and always shamed by teachers, other parents, community members, even research in the media, that if your kid is not behaving well, it's your fault, right? There's that common theme that parents are constantly being told, if something's wrong with the kid, there's something wrong with the parent. And so parents, being human themselves, are doing the best that they can to kind of manage that. And just like children use social media to find validation and find acceptance, I think so are parents when they're choosing to make these decisions about shaming their kid, having their kid hold up a sign, or having their kids wear like the bully, I'm wearing my bully shirt for the day. They're doing that because there's a part of them that's saying, hey, it's not just me. Look at my kid. Like, they know they're doing wrong. So stop picking on me and realize it's my kid. And
that's
in a sense,
excellent point. That's an excellent point.
Right? Right? And in a sense, I think they're looking for that validation too. They're saying, hey, I'm doing the best I can. Please, someone let me know. And again, I don't think it's that kind of desperation, but I'm kind of paraphrasing where it's this idea of, please, guys, please tell me it's not just me. Please tell me I'm not the worst parent in the world. Just like kids get on there and post selfies so their friends can say, hey, girl, you look cute, or hey, dude, you look so cool. It's the same thing. And I think we have to stop condemning parents for being human and instead start to realize that, okay, if I'm going to shame this parent and make them feel like the whole weight of their child personality and behavior is on them, that they're going to do whatever they can to alleviate that stress and that pain of always being shamed.
What I see, one of the things I see when I see that, take place on social media, what jumps out to me is a lack of skill set. To me, it shows me a parent is saying, you know what, I don't necessarily know how to handle this situation. So what I'm going to do, like you said, I'm going to put it on social media and show the world I'm in control of this.
Yes.
This is not going to happen under my watch because I'm a parent that doesn't play this. But what it's really showing is, hey, I really don't have the skill set or necessarily the knowledge of how to address this in a different manner.
Right. And I think that we need to really listen to that as what you're saying. Instead of saying, oh, my God, that parent is so horrible, if people could actually have that perspective shift, that mindset shift, and say, wow, it really looks like that parent's having a hard time. Wow, I wonder if that dad or that mom is really struggling with how to set limits for their child. If we can think that way, that endears us to actually be empathetic to that parent and look for ways to support them and surround them with support, as opposed to adding more shame to them by either praising them right? Because when you praise somebody for something, that kind of positively reinforces it, or shames them, which again, negatively reinforces it. Either way, when we just do it online by saying, you go, mom, you better do it that way. Or, you know what, mom, that's not really great. And the research shows that blah, blah, blah. Like when we do either of those things, we're not really getting at the heart of what it means to raise a child in today's world. We're just staying on the surface of what looks good or what looks bad, which I'm sure, as you know, as a parent, it changes almost every month. What's good parenting? What's bad parenting? Right? So it's like,
it does. And I think one of the problems is that we assume that, parents don't make mistakes, and we assume that our own parents don't make mistakes, right? Mm-hmm, what is the thing we always hear other parents say? Well, my parents didn't raise us that way, or my parents didn't play that. Well, when we were kids, we didn't think that way. When we were kids, we thought our parents made mistakes all of the time. But when we became an adult, our perception starts to be a little bit different of our parents' parenting style. Right. Now, as in adulthood, our parents are perfect parents, and we forget about all the mistakes that took place when they were raising us as kids.
Yeah. I talk a little bit about this idea of reflective parenting in my book and in some of my work, which is the parenting that allows you to sit back and really be reflective of what happened to you as you were being raised, both positive and not so positive. So there are things about our parenting that were like, you know what, that really helped me, that really, gave me the values and the foundation I have today. And there are also some things that when you look back on your own parenting, how you were raised, you might think, my parents really didn't need to do that specific discipline strategy or use that specific phrasing to get me to understand X, Y, and Z. And when you really take the time to do that reflective parenting, whether it be through meditation, journaling, with the professional or with a group of other parents, you really give yourself the chance to be aware of how maybe you've brought some of that into your parenting and how maybe you can start to be reflective of your own stuff because you have a safe space to say, I didn't really love that my parents did this, but because they did that, they taught me this value. So how can I teach my kid that same value without maybe doing the thing I didn't love?
You know what? That's an excellent concept, this whole notion of reflective parenting. I'm wondering, I'm stepping outside of parenting, more of a social work realm. I wonder, do school social workers, community social workers, when they're dealing with parents who are frustrated, that may have a lack of skill set, do they sit down with them and say, okay, let's look at your parents. What did they do really well with you? Yeah. What really worked and what didn't work? So that, they can kind of take some of the good from the past and incorporate that into their parenting style.
It's something that I think, I can't speak for all social workers. It's something that I think we are kind of taught to do in our training. But I think also sometimes you have to realize that social workers, too, are dealing with a huge weight of working in sometimes services that aren't always appreciative of them. So you've got social workers and child protective services who have 100 kids to see and they're only one person. So, I think at the end of the day, it would be nice if social workers could sit down and say, okay, I'm going to parse this out. I'm going to help this parent. But I think sometimes we have to also realize that social workers are also human as well. And they're contending with not just the client load, but the bureaucratic kind of democratic process they have to deal with notes and supervisors and meeting different nonprofit, what's the word I'm looking for? They're waiting for nonprofit, funding and things like that. And so we have to realize that, yes, social workers do, again, like we tell parents, they do the best they can under the circumstances. And so what I would share is that when we're working with parents as social workers, as therapists, as coaches, as, whatever title you're under, if you can take a few minutes just to let the parent know that it's okay to be human and that the best way to move through whatever it is that's ailing you as a parent, your child's behavior, maybe your co-parent is stressing you out, maybe your own parent is stressing you out, is to start to be honest and authentic in a safe space about what it is you want to change and how much of that change is dependent on you. And how much of that change is probably dependent on your own reflection and your own awareness. I think if we can get parents into that space, then we give them that safe space to say, okay, you're right. I do want my kid to change, but what can I do in my own parenting or what can I do in my own family or my house that can set up the environment for my child to start changing?
And I think those are great, excellent ideas. And are there any other resources for those parents who are out there who are struggling, with raising these tweens that they can turn to?
Well, I'll toot my own horn here. I'll say that one is my website. I love tweens. Tweens are.
Hold on. What's your website before we go further?
It is theparentingskill.com.
Okay.
Yes. And so that's a really good space. I think another good space actually is to look up different resources, whether it be online or local, where you can talk about what it means to be a tween. Or talk about what it means to be the parent of a tween. So there are Facebook groups, there are local meetup groups that I think would be really great for you to look up and see, okay, are there other groups, like I said, whether local or online, that have parents who are also parenting tweens or parenting kids in my age bracket. And I think being able to commiserate and talk with other parents also gives you a space to realize you're not alone and you're not doing this on your own.
You know what, Mercedes, let's talk about that Facebook group for a second, because I think it is so underutilized for parents.
Yes. Because
parents are on Facebook 24/7. You know, we know the numbers.
Yep.
How powerful is it to have a group where, you know, you could go to a closed Facebook group about parenting tweens and you could just, you know, put your, you know, question out there and have experts like myself and you to answer those questions and other parents to chime in so that, you know, there's this community around raising a child. You know, where it used to be the community in the neighborhood, that's like transcended to this online community where you can get feedback from professionals and from your peers.
Yes. And you just said it. I think that's what it is. It's that sense of community. I think parenting can be really isolating when you feel like you're the only person dealing with X, Y, and Z behaviors. And again, we have a society that really doesn't always talk about how difficult it is to be a parent, or who kind of always is shaming parents. So it can be hard sometimes to reach out and ask for help. But I think in an online community, it's really helpful because you get to say, I'm struggling. And like you said, there are peers on there. There are professionals on there who can say, here are some resources. What do you need? How can we support you? And I think in those moments, it really begins to help parents realize, okay, I'm not the only person dealing with a 13-year-old who's trying marijuana, or I'm not the only person who has an 11-year-old who's already been kicked out of school first couple weeks of sixth grade. Like, I'm not the only one dealing with that. And when you start to realize that, I think it gives you a sense of confidence. It gives you a sense of like, okay, humanness, where you can sit down and say, okay, I'm not alone and there is help. And one of my parents in my Facebook group even shared something that I thought was brilliant. She said, what I realize is one of my most important traits right now as a parent is hope. As long as I can keep that hope alive, I can continue to be there for myself and for my child. Wow. And I think that's what those parenting groups give you, is hope. Like, okay, I'm not the only parent dealing with this. And there may be even other parents who have dealt with it. And now, you know, their kid is 18, 19 and they're okay and they've survived it. So maybe I can do that as well, you know?
That's excellent. So where can parents find you? I know you just gave out the website. Are there other places that parents can contact you on the web to really, you know, get a lot of like articles and tips on how to parent tweens? Yeah,
so I'm pretty much, if you start at my website, which is theparentingskill.com, all the links, my Facebook group link is on there. I'm pretty much on every single social media site. So, and I totally talk to my followers if you reach out to me. So if you just start at the website, my blog is there. I have an online store with freebies as well as other things that you can purchase, my parent coaching services, my book about homework, and then my upcoming book will also be on there. It's called Shame-Proof Parenting. And so pretty much my website is like the hub for starting to connect with me.
And guys, I will tell you, it's an awesome website. I mean, she has links galore to all types of freebies, all types of courses, all types of ebooks, blogs, videos. If you are struggling with a tween, she should be your go-to person. All
Thank
honestly.
you.
And I don't say that by everyone. So please, go to her site, check it out. And we'll make sure we put all the links in the show notes. If you go to the digitalparentpodcast.com, you'll see all this information. But Mercedes, we really appreciate you being on the show. I think you really opened some eyes for some parents to kind of give them, some direction on where to go with these tweens that we're raising.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey guys, I hope you really enjoyed that episode with Mercedes. She gave us a lot of great detail of how to stop parent shaming and how really to communicate with our tweens. And make sure you go to her website called the parentingskill.com. If you go to her website, and it's in our show notes, she has an excellent link to give you a free consultation if you're dealing with any type of issue with your kid right now. And she has multiple blog posts. She has multiple national articles she's written on the subject. A lot of great information. And as always, please go to iTunes and rate the Digital Parent Podcast and let us know what you thought about this episode with Mercedes. Until the next time.